All right, good morning, everybody. It's Rabbi Kolakowski here. Just wanted to talk, something happened yesterday at work that I just found fascinating. How we often think of different religions as being so different, and then we find how similar we really are. So I'm the head chaplain in an institution, prison, a state prison. I'm not going to say which state. It's a state that runs their chaplaincy department very effectively, which not all states do. I'll say that. It's probably I would consider the hallmark of what chaplaincy should be in a state prison. It's there are certain issues, but the way things are run are incredible. I have tremendous respect for it. So anyway, I answer to my own prison, not really to the DOC as a whole, but the prison has to answer to the DOC, and so I kind of have two bosses. I have my local prison, and I have in central office, and so there's, pretty much the head of the chaplaincy department statewide. And he wrote me an interesting question. He was asking how important is it to have horseradish, because it was an issue. I don't need to get into the logistical issues of why horseradish might be an issue. Something they were allowing for a long time, and they're thinking they should probably get rid of it. And so then they asked me, how important is horseradish at the Passover Seder? And so I had to be honest. It really isn't. What are you saying? You make a bracha al chilas mara. What do you mean it's not important? Because all the tzaddikim, they used mara. They used grain for mara. Historically speaking, the Mishnah lists 5 types of mara, and the Rishonim Achronim discuss that lav davka those 5. But anyway, the first one, we would also, Rishonim Achronim assume, though, that among those 5, those are the best ones to use, because that's what the Mishnah mentions, and among those, it seems to be a certain order. And so chasa is lettuce. That's the first one. The second one is ulshin, which is endives, and the third one is something called tamcha. And there's a big discussion as to what exactly is tamcha. Generally, people call the horseradish tamcha. In classical rabbinical literature, where there was a reference to horseradish, it was called tamcha. But more likely, tamcha is wormwood, which is actually bitter. It's where they make vermouth, as opposed to this one, the horseradish, or as Stan Laurel would call her, horse's radish. The horseradish, first of all, is not an herb; it's a root. Some would say that the roots are just what's on the bottom, the little stringy roots, and that's really the stalk. The tuber part is really a stalk that just is under the ground. And it's not an herb, and it's not bitter, it's sharp. So the thing is, lettuce isn't bitter either, but that's another issue. But that being said, historically speaking, lettuce would be the best choice for maror. And horseradish is just because they didn't have access to lettuce. And then, like we said, it doesn't necessarily have to be those 5 species that are mentioned in the Mishnah, which we're not even sure that we can translate all of them. And so whatever, I brought different examples and gave that to the head of the chaplaincy department in central office in the capital. And so these are some of the issues that it's interesting how these things come up. That something became like, we have to use this. We have to use horseradish when you don't. You're not even really supposed to be using horseradish. My argument is that horseradish is because I mix horseradish usually with lettuce and I argue that the horseradish is part of the charosis. And so one of my rebbeim said that doesn't even make sense. But the fascinating thing is that the first reference we can find in rabbinical literature to using horseradish at the Pesach Seder is as an ingredient in the charosis. Fascinating thing. So that's kind of the way I approach it. That the lettuce is the what do you call it? I forgot how you call it. Lettuce is the maror, and the horseradish, along with the regular charosis, is the lettuce is part of the charosis. Now the fascinating thing is, on the Western, the Roman Church and most of the Protestant churches, this week is what they call Palm Sunday. And so they have a custom to distribute pieces of palm leaves to the faithful in the church. The Eastern Orthodox churches, this year everything's a week later. Sometimes it could be a month later, or even 5 weeks later. Different customs in different churches. So the fascinating thing was, so then we have in our prison, we have the Catholic deacon. He's going to bring in palms for all the Christians. So he'll hand them out to the Catholics, and then what's left over, and the Catholics, they have their mass in our prison, not on Sunday, on a different day. So so they're basically going to have it the day before, and then on Sunday the Protestants have their service, and so the Protestant pastor will distribute palms, and then a week later our Orthodox priest, who really his main service is ecumenical in his ministry, not really necessarily for Orthodox Christianity, but there are a few inmates who are Orthodox Christians, a handful. And so I said to him, he's going to be there covering the second Pesach Seder, which is the night before the Western Easter and the night before the Eastern Palm Sunday. And I said, we'll save a few palms for you, and you can call down before the Pesach Seder. You can call down your Orthodox inmates and distribute palms to them. And then he said, well, but we don't use palms, we use willows. But then he stopped and thought. He said, well, actually in his church they distribute both, because in Russia they didn't have palms, so they used something else. And then in but he's part of the OCA, the Orthodox Church of America, and so he has in his church Greek Orthodox also, and they're obviously going to have palms because it's not difficult in Greece to get palms. So they did have the palms. So the fascinating thing was that, I mean, it's not like by us, lulav has to be, there's a lot of precise laws. So, in the old days in Europe, maybe each town had one lulav and esrog set, everyone benched lulav on the roofs, on the communal lulav and esrog. That's how it was in the old days. Not like today when everyone has their own lulav and esrog. So, this with the palms it's usually the same like our lulav actually, but they usually just take one branch, like what we would use to make a ring. That's what each person gets, But anyway, the same thing. Maybe the patriarch in Moscow would get a palm, but everyone else would get whatever, the willow, something else, and but the fascinating thing is here, it's the same thing. Here, we want horseradish because why? Because in Northern Europe you couldn't get salad, you couldn't get lettuce, so you had horseradish. You made do with what you had, And in same thing, they didn't have wine in a lot of countries, So then there was a question, what can you make 4 cups on some other drink? You use milk. Then the problem is you having a meat dinner, you can't use milk. Some people were so poor they didn't have meat either. They didn't have wine. They didn't have, maybe they only had wine for Pesach. They didn't have wine the rest of the year. The rest of the year they'd make Kiddush Friday night on Challah, and Shabbos they had whiskey. You couldn't use whiskey because of chametz. Havdalah they'd make on whiskey also, especially in Poland. In Hungary they had wine. Because grapes grow in Hungary. And wine, Taka wine, comes from Hungary. So, it's just fascinating, all these different things, but how the same thing, that because you were in northern regions where you couldn't get certain things, they use something else, and then that becomes like, that's what we use, instead of, and then he realized, we're not going to get a gate clearance to bring the willows into the prison, but we'll get the gate clearance we have already palms. So he's like, you're right, I'll distribute to his flock. That movie, Heavens Above with Peter Sellers, said that the black sheep, your flock of black sheep are the prisoners, but he'll distribute to them, the palms instead of the willows, which is really better. It's the same thing. So the Jews will get lettuce instead of horseradish. So all these things are quite fascinating. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment. I'll tell you another funny story. One of the inmates was complaining, why are they making us sit together with these other groups? There's Hebrew Israelites, and there's Messianic Jews, and there's the assembly of this and the house of that, different Christian groups that also they want to have a Pesach Seder. And he said, I don't want to have to sit and have a Pesach Seder with them. I said, I asked this one inmate, I was like, you never had non-Jews at your Pesach Seder? He said, yeah, actually, we had a neighbor, a Catholic priest, and he always wanted to see a Pesach Seder. We invited him over. And I said, so why is that? He said, well, that's different. We're inviting him. This is different, forcing on us. I said, Yeah, but you're in prison, you know. Be happy that you could get matzah and haggadah and 4 cups of grape juice and maror, you know. So, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you all later. All right, take care.